to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome, and settle in with Deep Sleep Stories, where the day can soften into night as gently as a feather drifting down. Take a moment to notice how you're resting right now. Let your shoulders loosen as if warm hands have lightly unknotted them. Let your jaw unclench. Let your tongue rest easily behind your teeth. And as you breathe in, imagine the air arriving cool and clean, as though it has wandered in from the open water. As you breathe out, imagine the exhale carrying away any leftover noise from the day, any sharp edges, any unfinished thoughts. In this story, you'll drift to a sleepy marina at dusk, where lanterns begin to glow, the water turns to velvet, and quiet little wonders appear in the spaces between waves. Picture yourself arriving near the shore as the light begins to change. The sun is low, not bright now, but mellow and honeyed, as if it's been steeped in calm. The sky has the softest gradient pale gold near the horizon and deepening into lilac above. You can almost feel the air cooling, that pleasant transition where the warmth of afternoon releases you and the evening wraps you in a lighter, calmer cloth. Breathe in slowly, letting the inhale expand like a sail catching a gentle breeze. And breathe out slowly, letting the exhale settle like a boat finding its mooring. With every breath, you can let yourself become heavier, safer, quieter. Nothing is required of you. Nothing needs to be solved. You're simply here, letting dusk do what dusk does best, ease everything toward rest. And now, as your breathing grows steady and unhurried, the story can begin to carry itself, and you can simply listen and drift and let go. The marina at dusk was a small curved harbor tucked into the shoreline like a sheltered palm. It wasn't the kind of place that hurried people through. It invited them to slow down. The wooden docks were weathered to a gentle gray, their planks smoothed by many seasons of sun and salt and careful footsteps. Thick posts rose at intervals, crowned with simple iron hooks where lanterns would hang once evening came fully into its own. The water inside the harbor was calmer than the open sea beyond the breakwater. It held the sky's changing colors, as if it were practicing being a mirror. When a breeze moved through, it didn't roughen the surface so much as comb it, drawing out small ripples that caught the light and turned it into a soft, shifting shimmer. There were boats of all sizes, but none that seemed too large for quiet. Small sailboats with folded canvas rested beside sturdy fishing skiffs. A long, narrow vessel painted sea green sat near the end of the dock, like a sleepy dragon that had decided to be a boat for a while. Each craft was tied with ropes that creaked in a comforting way, like old wooden floors in a peaceful house. On the shore, a cluster of cottages faced the harbor. They had pitched roofs and windows that reflected the last of the day. Some windows were open, and from them drifted small domestic sounds. A spoon stirring a mug, the hush of a page turning, a kettle starting to murmur. A faint scent of bread and herbs wandered through the air, mingling with salt and seaweed and the clean mineral smell of tide-washed stones. A narrow footpath led down to the marina. It wound between low grasses and tufts of wildflowers that had closed their petals for the evening. The path was edged by stones set like an old, patient border. If someone walked slowly enough, they could hear the delicate click of pebbles beneath their steps and the quiet music of distant gulls settling into roost. It was along this path that a traveler arrived, unhurried and unburdened, as if they had been walking all day toward the idea of peace. The traveler's name was Elian, and they carried a small satchel slung across one shoulder. It wasn't heavy. It held only what was needed: a folded scarf, a notebook with a soft cover, and a little tin of tea leaves that smelled faintly of chamomile and citrus. Elian had come to the marina because the road had finally offered a choice: continue toward busier towns, or follow a side trail that led to the coast toward quieter air and gentler nights. Elian chose the coast. By the time Elian reached the harbor, the sun was already lowering behind the breakwater, and the world had that slowed down quality it often takes on just before nightfall. The wind felt softer, like it had learned how to move without disturbing anything. Even the sea beyond the harbor seemed to breathe in longer waves, as if it too was ready to rest. Elian paused at the top of the path where the marina revealed itself fully and simply looked. The boats bobbed lightly, a calm, repetitive motion that soothed the eyes. The ropes were slack but secure. The docks sat steady and familiar, as though they had always been waiting for this exact time of day to show their true nature. An invitation to linger, to listen, to become quiet. Elian's shoulders dropped almost without noticing. There was a gentle recognition in the chest, a feeling that this place had been imagined before, perhaps in a daydream or in the kind of half-sleep reverie that comes just before waking. The marina felt real and also slightly enchanted, as though the boundary between ordinary life and something softer was thinner here. A lantern keeper was walking the docks. They moved with slow, practiced steps, carrying a long taper used to light the lanterns one by one. Each lantern was made of glass and metal, with small star-shaped perforations along the top rim. When the lanterns were lit, they didn't blaze, they glowed. Their light was warm and steady, like a quiet voice speaking close to your ear. The lantern keeper paused at a hook, raised the taper, and touched flame to wick. The lantern caught, and its light spread gently through the glass, forming a small golden pool in the growing dusk. Then the lantern keeper moved on, leaving behind a line of soft illumination that made the docks feel like a calm pathway through a dream. Elian walked down the path and stepped onto the first dock. The wood had a faint spring to it, a friendly give. It felt solid and safe. Elian moved slowly, taking in the details. The way the grain of the planks ran like small rivers, the way tiny shells had lodged in crevices, the way each knot in the wood seemed like a closed eye resting. A cat was curled near a coil of rope, its fur the color of sand and smoke. One ear flicked as Elian approached, and the cat opened one sleepy eye. It looked at Elian with a mild, unbothered curiosity, then closed its eye again and returned to dozing. The message was clear. You may pass quietly, and you may be at ease. Elian continued along the dock until they reached a small bench that faced the harbor. The bench was simple, worn smooth, and it held the lingering warmth of the day. Elian sat, letting the satchel rest beside them, and listened. In the marina, there were layers of quiet. The closest layer was the soft lap of water against wood. It wasn't loud, but it was constant. A gentle rhythm that made the mind want to match it, to slow down and settle into the same steady motion. Another layer was the creak of ropes and the faint clink of metal rings. Those sounds came and went, never abrupt, always polite, like the marina was clearing its throat softly and then returning to silence. Farther away was the hush of the open sea, a broad, breathing sound that seemed to belong to the world itself, ancient and calm. And above, the sky was changing. The colors deepened and the first star appeared, not sharp but tender, like a small stitch of light sewn into the fabric of evening. Elian breathed in, and the air tasted of salt and something faintly sweet from the cottages. It felt as though the body had been holding its breath for days and now finally remembered how to exhale. A person approached along the dock with a basket on their arm. Their hair was silvered by the dusk, and they wore a thick cardigan that looked hand-knit. Their steps were unhurried, and their presence felt as gentle as the lantern glow. "Evening?" the person said softly, as if not to startle the air. "Elian," the traveler replied, giving their name without any need to explain it further. Names in places like this didn't need justification. They were simply offerings. The person smiled. "Welcome to the marina. I'm Sarah. You look like you've been walking with the day at your back." Elian nodded, and for a moment, there was no need to add anything else. The docks, the water, the lanterns, and the cooling air filled the space with meaning all on their own. Sarah glanced at the harbor and then back at Elian. "If you're staying the night, there's a little room above the boathouse. It's plain, but it's quiet. And the window looks out over the water, which helps people sleep." Elian's chest softened at the thought. "That sounds perfect." Sarah shifted the basket slightly. "Come along then. The lanterns will guide you." They walked together, and Elian noticed how Sarah moved, as if the docks belonged to them, not in a possessive way, but in a familiar way, like someone who knows each plank and each post as part of a daily rhythm. Sarah paused now and then to adjust a rope or pat the side of a boat, murmuring something too soft to catch, as though offering reassurance. At the end of the dock, they turned toward a small boathouse built close to the shore. It had a wide door and a roof that slanted toward the sea. Above it, a narrow staircase climbed to a second door. A lantern hung beside the stairs, casting a gentle oval of light. Inside the boathouse, the scent of wood shavings and tarred rope mixed with the salty air. It smelled like safe work and quiet craftsmanship. Tools hung neatly on the walls. Nets were folded and stored with care. A row of oars leaned in a corner, their handles worn smooth by use. Sarah led Elian up the stairs. The steps creaked softly, not in complaint, but in companionship. The room above was indeed plain, a small bed with a quilt, the color of deep ocean blue, a simple table with a candle, unlit for now because the lantern outside offered enough glow, a chair near the window. The window itself was wide and slightly fogged at the edges from the day's warmth, meeting the evening's cool. Beyond it, the marina lay like a quiet painting. Lanterns reflected in darkening water, boats rocking slowly, the sky turning toward night. Sarah set a small key on the table. There's tea downstairs in the kettle if you want it, and bread on the counter. Nothing fancy, just enough. Elian's gratitude rose like a gentle tide. Thank you. Sarah's smile was calm. This place likes to take care of tired travelers. Sleep comes easily here. You'll see. With that, Sarah left quietly, closing the door with the softest click. Elian stood in the middle of the room for a moment, simply absorbing the stillness. There was something about the quiet that felt thick and protective, like the marina was wrapped in a shawl. Elian set the satchel down, unfolded the scarf, and draped it over the chair. Then, drawn by the promise of warmth, Elian went back down to the boathouse. The kettle was indeed waiting, still warm from recent use. Elian poured water into a mug, added a pinch of tea leaves from the little tin, and let them steep. The mug warmed Elian's hands, and the steam rose in slow curls, carrying a gentle herbal scent that made the breath deepen naturally. Elian took a small piece of bread and ate slowly, not out of hunger exactly, but out of the sense that the body deserved comfort. Each bite felt grounding. When Elian returned upstairs with the mug of tea, the marina outside had grown dimmer, and the lanterns glowed brighter by contrast. Their reflections stretched across the water like gold ribbons, wavering gently with each movement of the tide. Elian sat by the window and sipped the tea. A few boats moved, not leaving the harbor, but shifting slightly as their moorings allowed. The motion was like rocking, like cradling. The marina had become a lullaby made of wood and water. As Elian watched, something curious happened. Near the edge of the dock, where the lantern light met the darker water, a small cluster of pale lights appeared beneath the surface. They were faint at first, like distant stars seen through fog. Then they drifted closer to the top, and their glow strengthened. Elian leaned forward, not with alarm, but with quiet wonder. The lights were moving in slow spirals, like a lazy dance. They weren't fish exactly, they were too gentle, too deliberate. They seemed to be little drifting sparks, as if the sea had learned how to keep a few pieces of starlight for itself. Elian watched as the cluster rose, and for a moment the water brightened from within. A soft radiance spread outward in a small circle, illuminating the underside of the dock. The wood above looked almost translucent in the glow, like old driftwood held up to the sun. The lights moved again, weaving together and then drifting apart, a slow choreography that felt soothing to observe. There was no urgency in them, no sharpness, only a calm, steady presence, as if they had all the time in the world. Elian had heard long ago a story about certain harbors where the sea held gentle mysteries, places where the water at dusk would offer small signs of peace, glowing plankton, moon jellies, or something more subtle, something that belonged not just to nature, but to the in-between. This marina felt like one of those places. The lights continued their slow spiral, and Elian felt the mind quiet further, as if the motion was smoothing thoughts into stillness. Outside, a few people moved along the shore, finishing their evening tasks. A door closed softly in one of the cottages. Someone laughed once, low and brief, and then the sound disappeared into the night like a pebble sinking into deep water. The marina remained calm, accepting everything without holding on to it. Elian sipped tea and let the eyelids grow heavy. But there was still a gentle pull to step outside again, to be closer to the water's hush and the lantern's glow. So Elian set the mug down, wrapped the scarf around the shoulders, and went back out into the evening. The docks were even quieter now. The lantern keeper had finished their rounds, and the line of warm lights made the marina feel like a floating pathway through twilight. Each lantern cast soft patterns through the star-shaped perforations, scattering tiny points of light onto the planks. Elian walked slowly, letting each step be unhurried. The wood beneath felt steady. The air smelled cooler now, and the salt seemed sharper in a pleasant way, like a clean sheet pulled fresh from the line. At the far end of the dock was a small platform where people sometimes sat to fish during the day. Now it was empty, and it faced the open water beyond the breakwater, where the horizon had nearly disappeared into night. Elian sat on the platform and let the feet dangle just above the water. The sea moved below, dark and smooth, carrying the lantern reflections like soft flames that refused to flicker wildly. The sky above had deepened into a velvet blue, and more stars were appearing, each one calm and steady, as if the heavens were quietly turning on 1,000 tiny lamps. A breeze moved across the harbor, cool enough to be refreshing, gentle enough to feel like a whisper. It brushed Elian's hair, touched the scarf, and then wandered on, not needing anything. As Elian sat there, the glowing lights beneath the water appeared again, but this time they were closer to the platform. They gathered like a slow, luminous cloud, drifting just under the surface. Their glow was faintly blue-green, like moonlight filtered through leaves. They moved in a pattern that felt almost intentional, as if they were spelling something in a language older than words. But Elian didn't try to translate. The marina didn't ask for effort. It offered experience, and the rest could be surrendered. The lights drifted around the platform, and one small glow rose closer to the surface, hovering near Elian's dangling feet. For a moment, the water there brightened, and Elian could see tiny swirls in the tide, delicate currents drawing patterns like lace. It was then that Elian heard a sound, soft, low, and melodic. Not a voice exactly, and not a song with words, more like a hum carried on the water itself, a vibration that seemed to come from the harbor's heart. Elian's breath slowed further. The hum wasn't loud. It was barely more than a feeling, like the way you can sense the purr of a cat when it rests against you, even if the room is quiet. The sound seemed to travel through the dock, through the air, and into Elian's chest, where it settled like warmth. The marina, it seemed, was singing. Not for an audience, not for performance, just because dusk had arrived. And this was what the marina did when the day let go. Elian's eyelids grew heavier, and the head dipped slightly, as though nodding in time with the water's breath. A small boat drifted by, guided by a slow hand on a paddle. The person in the boat moved silently, as if they didn't want to disturb the night. A lantern sat at the bow, its glow dimmer than the dock lights, but warm and steady. The boat glided through the harbor like a thought, drifting towards sleep. And then it settled near the shore, where someone caught the rope and tied it gently. No one spoke. No one needed to. The world was doing what it was meant to do in the evening, quieting itself, becoming simple. Elian stayed a while longer, letting the hum and the water and the lantern light wash through the senses. Each moment felt like it stretched slightly, giving plenty of room for the mind to relax. The marina seemed to exist outside of urgency, in a pocket of time where nothing pressed and nothing pulled. Eventually, the cool air suggested the comfort of bed. The body, warmed earlier by tea and bread, and the day's remaining heat, now welcomed the idea of a quilt and a pillow. Elian stood slowly, careful not to startle the quiet, and walked back along the dock. As Elian passed each lantern, the light fell softly across the face and hands like a gentle blessing. The star-shaped perforations scattered tiny points of brightness onto the scarf and sleeves. It felt as though the marina was decorating Elian with starlight. The cat near the rope coil lifted its head this time, stretching languidly. It yawned wide, showing small teeth, then blinked at Elian with sleepy approval. The cat stood, rubbed against the post, and then curled back down again, returning to its private dream. Elian reached the stairs to the room above the boathouse, climbed them quietly, and entered the plain, peaceful space. Inside, the air was still, but it carried the marina's hush, as though the quiet had followed Elian up the steps and into the room. The quilt on the bed looked inviting. The window held a view of lanterns and water and sky. All of it dimmer now, all of it turning toward night's deeper calm. Elian set the scarf on the chair and changed into soft clothes meant for sleeping. The movements were slow, unhurried, as if there was no reason to rush toward rest when rest was already waiting. Before lying down, Elian went to the window once more. The glowing lights beneath the water had spread out across the harbor, now and then gathering in a small cluster, then drifting apart like dandelion seeds in a gentle current. They were fainter than before, as if they too were growing sleepy. The marina's hum was still there, but quieter now, like a lullaby fading as the listener drifts away. Elian climbed into bed and pulled the quilt up, feeling its weight settle across the body. It wasn't heavy, but it was grounding. It felt like being held. The pillow cradled Elian's head, and the muscles of the neck released their last bits of tension. Outside, a lantern swayed slightly in the breeze, and its reflection wavered on the water, stretching and shrinking like a slow breath. The boats rocked gently in their moorings, and the sound of the sea beyond the breakwater was a steady, distant hush. Elian's thoughts, which had been busy for so long, began to loosen and drift, as if they were small leaves floating downstream. They didn't need to arrive anywhere. They could simply move slowly until they disappeared into quiet. As Elian lay there, the marina seemed to lean closer, not physically, but in feeling. It was as though the whole harbor was a companion to sleep, keeping watch, keeping rhythm. In the dimness, Elian imagined the docks as gentle pathways of light, the lanterns as warm eyes, the water as a dark blanket. The glowing lights beneath the surface became soft stars in an underwater sky. And somewhere in that quiet imagining, Elian began to dream. In the dream, Elian was walking along the dock again, but the marina was even more serene, as though it had slipped into a deeper layer of itself. The lanterns were brighter, their light more golden, yet still soft. The water was darker, like ink, but it held the reflections perfectly, as if every lantern had a twin beneath the surface. Elian walked to the end of the dock and saw a small gate there that hadn't been visible before. It was simple, made of pale wood, and it opened onto nothing but air. And yet beyond it, there was a sense of a path. Elian opened the gate and instead of stepping into emptiness, stepped onto a narrow walkway made of moonlight. It stretched just above the water, shimmering softly, steady underfoot. It didn't feel dangerous. It felt natural, as if moonlight had always been meant to be walked upon. Elian followed the walkway outward, beyond the shelter of the harbor, toward the open sea. The waves out here were larger, but they moved slowly, like the breathing of a sleeping giant. The moon hung low, round and calm, and its light painted the water in a wide, glowing road. As Elian walked, the glowing lights beneath the surface followed. They gathered under the moonlit path, swimming along like silent companions. Their soft, blue-green glow mingled with the moonlight, creating a gentle radiance that seemed to fill the night with tenderness. In the distance, a shape rose from the water, an island, perhaps, or a reef. But as Elian approached, it became clear that it wasn't land. It It was a great, slow-moving creature, ancient and gentle, surfacing just enough to reveal a smooth back, like a small hill. It was a whale, but unlike any Elian had seen. Its skin shimmered faintly with the same glow as the lights in the harbor, as if it carried the marina's calm magic with it. The whale's eye opened briefly, dark and kind, and it looked at Elian without fear. Then, as though offering a gift, the whale exhaled. The breath rose into the air as a fine mist, and in that mist, tiny lights appeared, like drifting lantern sparks, like stars freed from the sky. They floated around Elian in slow spirals, and each one felt like a small release, a small easing of the heart. Elian stood on the moonlit path and let the lights drift past, brushing the cheeks, the hands, the shoulders. Wherever they touched, tension melted away. Wherever they floated, the mind grew quieter. The whale sank back beneath the surface, unhurried, and the glowing lights followed it down like a curtain closing gently. The moonlit path shimmered a moment longer, then began to fade, as though it had done its work. Elian turned back toward the marina, and the harbor's lanterns looked like a welcoming necklace of warmth in the distance. Step by step, Elian returned, and with each step, the dream grew softer, blurrier, more peaceful. The gate at the end of the dock was there again, open and waiting. Elian stepped through it, and the dock planks felt solid underfoot once more. The lantern keeper appeared, smiling quietly, and lifted the taper as if to dim the lights. One by one, the lanterns softened, their glow shrinking into smaller pools, then into gentle embers. The marina settled further into stillness. Elian returned to the room above the boathouse in the dream, and the bed was waiting, quilt turned down, pillow cool and inviting. Elian lay down, and the dream folded around them like a soft tide. The sea's hush became a deeper hush. The lantern light became a faint glow behind closed eyes, and Elian drifted deeper and deeper into a sleep that felt like being carried. Now the marina is quiet in every corner. The docks are still. The boats rock more slowly, as if even the water is sleepy. The lanterns glow softly, and their reflections stretch into long, calm ribbons on the dark surface. Elian sleeps in the small room above the boathouse, breathing evenly, the quilt rising and falling like a gentle wave. Outside, the sea continues its patient rhythm. In the cottages, lights have dimmed, doors are closed. The village has tucked itself in. Above, the stars hold their places, steady and serene. And beneath the harbor water, those faint glowing lights drift lazily like underwater fireflies that have decided to dream. Everything is easing toward quiet. Everything is safe. If any thoughts remain, they can float away now, like little boats untied from the day's worries, drifting out into the open water where they become too small to see. The air is cool and clean. The darkness is soft, not heavy. The night is a blanket that doesn't press, only comforts. Breath can be slow, shoulders can be loose, hands can be warm and still. The marina keeps its gentle watch, lantern by lantern, wave by wave, as the world settles into rest. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.